They're working toward making America great again. It's very simple. We are making America great again. I saw it today on a somewhat leftish broadcast. They were saying, you know, whether you like it or not, these numbers are starting to get very good, and they are, and that's good for all of us. But during the season of joy and peace, we have so much to celebrate as a nation, because 1 year ago we really were. We were a country that was in serious trouble. There are those that say we were a country that was really not going to make it, and they were saying we were not going to make it. Now we have the hottest country anywhere in the world. They're all saying it. Other leaders are saying it. The European nations are saying it. The European nations are reporting that your president might as well be the leader of the European nations also. They listen to us and they respect us like they've never respected us before. So we're going to work very hard. We get along with them. We want to get along with as many nations as we can. We've been ripped off by a lot of them for a lot of years. And frankly, a lot of the Democrats knew that better than some of the Republicans. But we've been ripped off and taken advantage of by friend and foe. And in many cases, friend was worse than foe. But not anymore. We have, I don't know if you noticed, the deficit was cut down by 64%. Nobody's ever heard of a number like that. You know why? A thing called tariffs. The tariffs are so big and so substantial. And it was just announced 2 weeks ago, the deficit's cut down by, nobody ever heard of a number like that. If the deficit goes down by 2%, it's like a great thing. The tariffs have reduced the deficit by 64%. Nobody has ever seen. And frankly, we haven't even started yet. It's given us strength. We've solved 8 wars. Think of it, 8 wars have been solved. Although Thailand and Cambodia, I think I'm going to have to make a couple of phone calls on Thailand, but we'll get that one back on track. But think of it, we've solved 8 wars. That's never happened. And more Americans are working today than ever before in the history of our country. We've never had anything like it. We have more Americans working today than at any time, by far, in the history of our country. And 100% of all new jobs have been created, 100% created in the private sector. I mean, that's a big factor, right, Virginia, right? Also, just announced, real wages are up for the typical worker by more than $1,000 a year. That's a record, $1,000 a year. And many of you in Congress worked very hard, both sides, this year to keep the promises that you were elected on and to deliver big wins for the American people. And Democrats worked very hard, too. I mean, I think you could get rid of a couple of your little policies like men and women's sports, open borders, transgender for everybody. But other than that, I like what you're doing. You passed the largest tax cuts in American history. We all did that. We passed the largest spending cuts in American history. And we have the largest regulation cuts by far in American history. All of these things we just passed. You passed the Lake and Riley Act to get criminal aliens off the streets so they don't kill our people, hurt our people, mug our people, slice up our people, which is what they did. They're not doing it so much because crime is way down. And you passed the Genius Act to unleash a new era of financial innovation. And on a bipartisan basis, working with a woman named Melania. Have you heard of Melania?
This video is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect yourself this Christmas with one of the best VPNs out there. Cybercriminals are out to get your bank account information while you do your Christmas shopping online. But you can protect your privacy, money, and identity now with ExpressVPN for as little as 8 pence a day. Click the link now to claim up to 75% off.
Are we about to see the mega union, a Make America Great Again alternative to the European Union? A leaked version of President Trump's new national security strategy suggests something extraordinary, that the United States may attempt to pull at least 4 European nations away from the EU itself. Reports are suggesting that Italy, Hungary, Poland and Austria are being quietly earmarked as the core of a new America-aligned Europe. According to Defense One, the document proposes that Washington build tighter relationships with governments culturally aligned with Trump's worldview. with the explicit goal of pulling them away from the EU. Now, the White House is dismissing these reports as fake news, but it does raise the question, could a US-led alliance be exactly what Europe needs to pull itself back from what President Trump is calling civilizational erasure? Well, let's now talk to former UKIP leader Henry Bolton about this. Henry, a very good evening. Thank you for joining me on The Late Show Live. So when you heard this rumour that these 4 countries at least being tempted away, throwing out his fishing rod, reeling them in, come over the Atlantic, work harder with me, leave that lot. Sounds like a blooming lovely idea, Henry, doesn't it?
Well, in some respects, yeah. Well, the first thing to say is that the White House has already denied that there's this extended, this sort of bigger version of the United States national security strategy. I don't know why they've denied it. It's entirely normal practice for any country to publish a classified, a non-classified version publicly and have a sort of rather more in-depth one privately, if you like. It's sort of restricted distribution. So that would be normal. So I think this is a useful conversation at this time, and perhaps we can over-dramatize it. And the Europeans are getting very nervous about, first of all, Trump's approach to peace in Ukraine, basically going above their heads and negotiating directly with President Putin, rather than when they feel that this impacts their regional security directly, they should be involved, and also they want Ukraine sort of front and centre of those negotiations too, because it obviously affects Ukraine. So the Europeans are very nervous about this because they see this as an additional sort of undermining of Europe, and of course it is. He's basically explicitly said that the European Union is a problem. And indeed, the European member states, and the United Kingdom, are suffering from a huge array of internal challenges, whether it's mass immigration, whether it's illegal immigration, whether it's lawlessness, two-tier policing, all sorts of things going on, the whole woke agenda. And so, whilst there are people in the UK and Europe who are trying to sort of counter this, President Trump's input, I'm sure, is going to be welcomed. But on the other hand, it's also something that is seen and is, in fact, direct interference in the democratic process of the countries concerned, all of which have institutions which are in some cases a lot older than those of the United States, that provide legitimate debate and discussion, and a far from perfect, but nonetheless pretty top tier degree of consultation with all elements of society. So, there is a democratic process here, and it would be wrong of President Trump to interfere with that. An ally and a friend, rather like a family member, will give advice, sage counsel, may even do so quite passionately. But to, as the national security strategy suggests, encourage resistance to democratic governments, I think, is a mistake, and will actually entrench the opposite views to the ones that he wants Europe to take.
OK, thank you, Henry. Let me bring in my panel. Stay with me, Henry. Democrat strategist Richard Goodstein is here, and also Executive Director and at Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosha. Gentlemen, so Tim, you were listening to that. Does Donald Trump have the role? Should he just be a critical friend from the sidelines of the EU, or should he be quite deliberately trying to dismantle the organisation altogether?
Well, let's be careful. This is a leaked document. This is not straight from the horse's mouth. So we got to be careful that we're just kind of playing along with this idea. But I think that if you kind of look at it, I think I have to agree that there are some really good points and some very important things to take into mind here. I mean, you think about the national security angle here. Who's the number one trading partner to China? It's the European Union right now. European Union has increased their imports from China big time to now they're saying we have to cut back a little bit because we're enabling this horrendous Chinese Communist Party to grow and flourish. And so that's a problem. Then you have, of course, the operative of a bilateral trade deal, which actually is way more beneficial to each country. So you have to, you have to take this in stride and see that, okay, there might be something good here, Bev, but in the end, remember, it's just leaked. leaked information, and you got to take it for what it is.
Richard, what's your position on this as a Democrat strategist? Does President Trump have a right to be making mischief, even if this can't be taken as government policy, that perhaps there would be an ambition to tease some of these countries away from the EU?
Donald Trump today tried to strong-arm Republican state senators in the state of Indiana in the United States to do something that he desperately wanted done that would help his party keep control of the House of Representatives, and he failed. He failed in part because his popularity is at an all-time low for his presidency, his first term and this one. The notion that somehow or other he's going to lure 4 countries out of the EU to form what? Look, there was a reason we saw when he was president the first time, the leaders of NATO laugh behind his back because he doesn't instill confidence in people. He's buds with Orban. Autocrats love autocrats. But the notion that somehow Poland, which is really standing foursquare with Ukraine, is going to somehow abandon them and kind of form this other union with Trump and Italy. I think it's preposterous. And remember, Trump took credit for ending the war between Albania and Azerbaijan, right? Something that was a fantasy.
It was actually Armenia and Azerbaijan.
But my point is, the European leaders laughed at him at the UN because he was talking about things, or even ending the war between Cambodia and Albania. I mean, he just says things that don't instill confidence. I don't think this is
President Trump's foreign policy is one to marvel at. The fact that President Trump is able to wrangle the EU, the entire EU, to make a trade deal, to open up their markets to the U.S., to give the U.S. a better deal, to give farmers a better deal, is a remarkable achievement that could only have been achieved by President Trump strong-arming the U.S. power and strength of the economy to the EU. The Italians and the Hungarians, all of them wanted to do a better deal except for the EU standing in their way. This is an opportunity, potential opportunity. By the way, it's not even for sure this is happening or this is true. This is an opportunity, Rich, for President Trump and countries to make better deals.
Can I say one thing, Bev?
Just one second, because we're going to be, I'm with you guys for 2 hours. This is going to be a fun one. I'm enjoying this. But let me just get a last word from Henry before you go. Henry, what are the fault lines that distinguish the rest of the EU and those countries that President Trump feels aligned with, as in Poland and Italy, and he also likes Marine Le Pen in France, of course. So how would you describe what they have in common with Trump compared to the rest of the EU?
Well, I think there is an outlier there. It's Viktor Orban in Hungary,
yes,
which
thank you.
I think, that there is an opportunity there, maybe if that's what he's seeking to do, genuinely, to sort of hive off some of the countries out of the European Union and encourage a sort of a Hungarian version of Brexit, then perhaps he might get some traction in Hungary. I know Austria and Italy very well, and France is just across the water from where I am now. It's about 22 miles from where I'm actually sitting. The populations in those countries, even if there are some politicians who are sympathetic, the populations in those countries, particularly in Austria, are very European in outlook and approach, and just simply would not countenance their countries leaving the European Union, even if a small minority would. And although we know that there's going to be no traction there, there might be politicians that President Trump thinks he gets on well with and has a good rapport with in those countries, and that's encouraged him to take this line. But the populations won't countenance it. And I think, yes, we don't.
Firmer borders. Just want to bring it onto the UK as well, Henry, because I think firmer borders is probably what I would say defines those countries compared to other countries in the EU. But where does the UK sit in this conversation? Starmer plays a very delicate balancing act between not wanting to accept President Trump. He often says something when he's there and he does the polar opposite the next day, such as declaring Palestine a state the day after they'd stood together in Chequers, when he didn't do that while Trump was in his own house. There's sometimes he doesn't seem to know how to handle President Trump. But where would the UK sit in this particular narrative?
Well, I think that, President Trump has sent some mixed messages because he's included the UK as one of those countries that he thinks, we are, and I would agree with him to a large extent, we are losing our culture and our history and our heritage to imported foreign cultures. He's got a point there. But on the other hand, we're outside the European Union, so we're not part of the dismantling the European Union bit, apart from an example as to how it can happen. I have to say, I think I'm no fan of Prime Minister Starmer. But he has played the relationship with President Trump, which is a difficult and constantly shifting thing, very well. So I think the United Kingdom is, as it often has been, is rather between the United States and our sort of European allies, as a sort of bit of a bridge between, or at least somebody who can see both sides of the picture. And I think that might feed into things as we go forward, because I think President Trump will find that he's got no choice but to sort of roll back a little bit. As I said at the beginning, we can over-dramatize what's been said in the National Security Strategy, the published version. I think part of the reason I say that is because the United Kingdom does have a little bit of influence. We are listened to to an extent, and I think we can sort of help massage this. So we're in a position that's really useful to us, but useful to all parties as well.
Okay. All right, Henry, thank you so much. Good to see you. Henry Bolton there joining us from the UK. And before we go to a quick break, gentlemen, in the studio, can I just ask the question that our audience often ask when I have new people in? Who are you? I'm not joking. Can you just, I don't want to sound like some sort of corporate away day, but can you just sum up for our audience who you are, Tim?
Yeah, I'm the son of Dan and Jan Desher from Lake Orion, Michigan, and near Detroit. Here in Washington, D.C. at Unleash Prosperity, a supply-side economic think tank, free markets, less regulation, strong dollar. These are the pillars of what we see as success. And you lived in the UK for a year. So
fantastic. Richard Goodstein, who are you to our audience?
I am here, I think, because I've been involved in democratic politics since college. I became a talking head thanks to Monica Lewinsky because I was an early Bill Clinton supporter. And all the way through the Florida recount and so forth. I was a regular on Fox News. I was a weekly Tucker Carlson's lead guest on Monday nights for years. So I'm familiar with kind of talking with people who don't necessarily see things the way I do.
Fantastic. Marvellous. I've not heard the name Monica Lewinsky for a while.
Well, there you go.
There we go. So